Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka Podcast.
Baka. It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka, a anime podcast where three guys pretend they're way smarter than they are as they talk about the anime they watched over the past 2 weeks. That is the concept. And then after we're done talking about it, we turn it over to our audience to carry the discussion on to much greater heights. And this podcast episode, we're talking about the anime Cells at Work, a very unusual anime for this podcast. I'm kind of concerned about where the discussion will go with it, but let's get started. So first off, I need the help of my co-host. First, we have the esophagus to my throat. Jeremy, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. That's a very neutral one. That's that's nice.
Yeah. I hope we all see where this is going.
Yes, I think
figuratively and literally. But tell me about you, Jeremy.
I'm doing pretty good. The wife got me a very early Christmas present, Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. So I've been goofing off with that.
I'm so jealous.
Very
and
good.
your and the posters behind you are awesome.
Yes.
In the YouTube video, you got new posters on the wall. Superior Spider-Man, Magic.
Yeah. I didn't actually know about what Spider-Man that was, but the poster was free from the comic book shop. So I was like, hell yeah, I'll put it on my wall.
Hard to have a bad Spider-Man, though, right?
That's right.
All right. Then we also have the intestine to my anus.
That's where I thought it was going.
How you doing, man?
Didn't see that coming from 15 miles away.
You didn't see that 2 weeks ago when I hit the anime.
Right. The new Path of Exile League came out, so my life's been consumed. It came out less than 19 hours ago now. Oh, like, yeah. And there's already a 93, level 93. Someone's down Shaper.
Wow.
just and I'm just hitting 64, so like I feel so inept. I'm just like watching these people like do all these accomplishments. I'm like, what am I doing with my life? Oh, I have a life. That's right.
How many hours are you in?
Out of those 18, I'm probably 11.
That's what I was wondering. Yep.
and how long? I'm not even gonna ask. I know the answer.
No, I need this question.
How long ago were you last playing?
Oh,
that's a good one too.
I already know the answer.
Can we say about an hour ago?
Okay, let's go with that. I have updated the game and looked up character builds. Totally in.
I'm trying a new custom build this time around, which I haven't done in like 6 leagues. Like normally I look up someone's build and I just kind of follow it. And this time I haven't looked up anyone's build.
Now we mentioned this game a lot, but I'm going to plug it a little bit because if Diablo is your type of game and you're not happy with Diablo, which we've talked about here recently, Path of Exile is the hero we all deserve and need.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really fair to say. And I'm a big fan of the game, even when Jason talks about it too much.
My life is just too much consumed with it. Oh, side note, just to irritate Troy, my wife also got me Smash Brothers Ultimate.
Dude, we got a co-op.
Right?
Yes, because I suck right now and I need help.
We just got little Mike and Meta Knight. So.
Oh, sweet! I have Pac-Man and who else? Oh yeah, I also unlocked Marth, and I am not impressed with Marth.
Yeah, this small intestine is doing well on the Switch.
My name is Troy, and I don't have a Switch, and I don't get to play Smash Brothers.
What's been up to lately?
I actually don't have much. I've been watching some shows and movies. I watched the new Ant-Man. It was good. Not as good as the first one, but good. I want to actually say some anime news or anime related news. For anyone who doesn't know, Shonen Jump, which is recently gone digital, is now going to be a free publication. And they have a $2 subscription to get all their backlog, but you can keep up with the latest shonen manga for free now. And for people who have to sneak online and pirate that stuff and risk, websites that might ruin you, especially younger audiences, guys, that there you go. That's a huge thing for the anime manga community, and I wanted to call it out here for all of you that listen.
Is it online only, or do you think is it also like paper in the mail?
I think they're only digital now. I think they're going digital, but I'm not sure, and it hasn't started yet. It's later in December, so look into it if reading manga is your thing, or are interested in getting into there, but always worried about a price barrier. They have the spin-off from My Hero Academia Vigilantes already for free, but like My Hero Academia is on there.
I thought you were going to say the chibi version. I was going to get upset.
No, Vigilantes deals with the heroes that are not licensed, who hero anyway.
Oh.
And it's kind of, it more looks at the bad side of that society instead of the shining pinnacle of it. It's actually really cool. All right, let's actually talk about the anime we watched, though. Sorry for the long intro, but I don't know if we're going to have as much discussion as usual with this anime. It's not as deep, but it has a ton in it. So, and we'll talk about that. But let's start with our non-spoiler reviews. And Jeremy, why don't you go ahead and start us off? Cells at Work, what'd you think? I
really, really liked it. It's certainly not a standard anime fare, but it never intended to be. It's episodic and it's educational, but it manages to do it in a really entertaining way. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
All right, Jason, how about you?
I had fun watching it. It wasn't something to grab me. I think my expectations were really high for it because I heard from multiple people that this was a really good anime, and it just didn't kind of hit those boxes for me. But it was a nice watch. It was really I don't know, almost relaxing, but also weird. I don't know. We'll get more into it. Yeah.
For me, it hit the one box I love hitting an anime to hit the most is it's completely new to me. It's something I've never seen before. So I really enjoyed it on that aspect. If you're going to talk about negatives, I think it's tropey. It's episodic. It's not deep. But because it applies that all to real factual biology with an artistic, license there, it's okay. It works anyway. And it is entertaining. But I think concept carries this anime probably more than anything. And I don't know how long it would carry it for me. Like, I don't know if I could go 5 seasons of this, maybe another. I think I'd still be interested. But after like 3 or 4 more seasons, I'd be like, yeah, okay, I get it. Weird bacteria shows up. Here's how it works.
I did like the spinoff that you concept that you told us about.
I looked up the artists and stuff, and nothing had links. The studio is actually David Production, which does JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. But the manga spin-offs for this anime, there's Bacteria at Work, which deals with just the stomach and the good bacteria who help the stomach. Cells Not at Work, which is about immature red blood cells that aren't currently doing their job. And the best one is Cells at Work Black, which is an adult subject matter that they didn't want to put into Cells at Work because this is a shonen lighthearted comedy. Cells at Work Black deals with characters with alcoholism, smoking, the bacteria wins, they have STDs, and the cells are like depressed and bored and suicidal, but they have to keep doing their job anyway. And I know one of my teenage daughters started reading that manga when I mentioned it to her, and she's like, I'm never smoking or drinking. Holy moly, I didn't know. And I'm like, yes, yes.
Success.
Parenting. I think I did parenting, guys.
Show them anime and manga.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So thoughts on the opening and closing, you guys?
They were cute. Weren't particularly fond of them. But the earworm that is the opening is still stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Hataraku. It's just like, yeah.
We are says at work.
I think I loved it the most when I think it's episode 9, maybe, where all of a sudden the singers switch and you get macrophage, and I think it's the Killer T that's singing, and it's just, oh man, it does so much when they mix things up like that. But yeah, it was cute, entertaining.
Yeah, it actually clued me in that in the intro, it's Red and White Blood Cell who are actually singing the intro song, and I think that makes it work even better. I enjoyed the intro a lot. The ending was also cute, but not really relevant, especially imagery wise. It's a red blood cell pushing a platelet around,
and the cutest thing about it is platelets just kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so from here on, it's spoiler section, guys. So this is your spoiler warning. The plot of this anime will be ruined if you go any further and haven't seen it, but that's up to you whether that's okay. Let's talk a little bit about the concept of this anime. This is about the human body and the cells inside of it, and they have been imagined as human people doing a 24/7, 365 days a year job to take care of a body. How does that work for you guys?
For me, it was a really neat take on personifying everything. But the problem is, which we'll get into later, when you have an abrasion or a scrape and you have actual blood loss, with blood loss is people, it's horrendous.
Yes. I absolutely love the idea of having people represent this, because, I mean, honestly, this whole series is just an educational, informational series, and it would get so boring and so stale. But the way that they can pretend that these cells are somebody that we can empathize with, and we can see what they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and the way they interact with each other and the problems around them, it does a lot to keep me interested, and I think it was great decision.
Yeah, I'll preface what I said before about just the like horrendous view of watching all the blood loss. The personifying all these cells really, really works, and it really works almost really well in the battle anime aspect of it, even though those battles tend to be fairly short. But yeah, it's I enjoyed myself watching it.
But I also definitely agree with you, Troy, that after one season, if they didn't do something drastically different for every season, I would get really bored.
Yeah, absolutely. And even some of the later episodes where it's like, I'm a bacteria and I'm here, and I'm like, yeah, that happened since the first episode. So
I did love the gong of the heartbeat. That was really neat.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of little artistic details that tie into a real world aspect. Like B-Cell's gun is in the shape of a Y because antibodies are in the shape of a Y. Even on the side of his gun, when he loads it, it has the IgE already written on it before they even say they're shooting IgE. There's just really cool little flares like that. The fact Dendritic cell lives in a tree because he's a cell that looks tree shaped.
Yeah.
Or all the walkways have those like arches over them.
Right.
They're veins.
There's so much of that in here that it's actually the more you know. I think this is almost enjoyable to watch if you already knew everything it's trying to teach you, because you can spot all these little bonus details.
Yeah.
Which there's a YouTube series of a doctor that.
Yes. And I've watched all the videos. I think he's done the first 5 episodes. I highly recommend him. It's Dr. Hope's Sick Notes. He usually does like Scrubs and House and like, here's a real doctor reacting to this. And he started watching these anime videos and got the most views he's ever had. You know, us anime fans, what are you going to do?
Yep.
But what's really nice about him is he's not like, this is weird that this is a cartoon, but I guess it works. He's completely open-minded to the aspect of the anime and to the anime, I guess, the tropes. They don't like rub him the wrong way, but yeah, he's still like, he'll stop the video and he'll explain like, here's why this bacteria has tentacles. You know,
really, that's super cool.
I think that it actually really pairs really well with the anime.
Not really before, but as each episode was going, I found myself stopping and going and researching stuff.
Yeah.
So that I had a better
hoping
understanding
you would.
as I was. Oh yeah. I mean, one of the things, like you mentioned, the detail, if you noticed, like red blood cells and platelets, you have boys and girls, right? But with the white blood cells, they're all guys, right? There's no girls. The neutrophils are actually sexually dimorphic. So like women have a special X chromosome on the nucleus of the neutrophil. They call it a drumstick. And it is distinctly different than male neutrophils. In a dude, there is no X chromosome on the neutrophil. It does not have a drumstick. So I'm thinking this is probably a male human whose body they're in. Maybe.
Yeah. At the end, I want to talk about the human, just so you know. I want theories on the human. But interesting enough, cells that work black, white blood cells, female.
Yeah. And I bet you all of them will be female there, and I bet you it's in a woman.
That's fascinating. All right.
That's really cool.
All right, let's start with our first episode. We meet our main character, Red Blood Cell, who I'm going to call Red, because there are every red blood cell is called Red Blood Cell. They have specific numbers, and I didn't want to call the character a number over and over.
1146, right?
So the main Red Blood Cell, who's got a red cowlick, which apparently does not mean she's sickle cell.
No. I kept waiting for that as like a tragedy where Neutrophil would have to kill her or something, but it never happened.
Because sickle cell would affect more than just one blood cell. Everyone's ruled that out, but that theory did go out through the internet. But she wears the uniform, and I love that the hat looks like a red blood cell from behind. Yeah. But she's our main character, and she's this klutzy, ditzy, new to the body red blood cell who's always lost.
That's probably the most charming aspect of this anime. Is that it's funny, as many times as they would point that out, for some reason I just never found it get old that she was lost. Yeah, because it was such a great joke. Because
my map's upside down.
How long have you been here? And how many times has your map been upside down? Why are you lost?
Yep. Yeah, I also thought it was a nice way to kind of point out the fact that red blood cells don't really know where they're going in the body. Like, they're just a particle in the body. I mean, they're a cell in the body. Yeah, they go where the veins are pushing them, where the heart's pushing them through the veins, right? So she wouldn't really know. And she's actually the one that makes more sense than the rest of the red blood cells who act like they know where they're going. It should kind of be like, oh, no, we're going wherever we gotta go.
Which I will point out one thing. If I kept running into this specific red blood cell, I would never want to be around her because she's always running into tragedy. And I know it's a story thing where, she's the main character, so all the events should be happening around her. But wow, when it's like accident after accident after accident, it's like, no, I'm not hanging out with you.
Yes.
So, thoughts on the character? Enjoyable?
Oh yeah, I enjoyed her.
Yeah, I thought she was great. She was entertaining and funny, and I really liked how they did give her an arc. I mean, this is a hard anime to kind of force an arc into it because of the topic and the episodic nature of it. But like Jason in the pre-show, you mentioned that there is some character development, and I definitely saw it with her. In the last few episodes, she shows that she can deal with stress better than any of the other red blood cells. And it was really nice to see that her happy-go-lucky nature had just turned into a fortitude and strength to handle stress. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's what happens when you encounter so many germs.
Troy, do you ship it, white and red?
Absolutely.
Oh, of course he does.
Absolutely. And I also now ship my own red and white blood cells.
Oh, God.
Just cut both ends of my fingers and kiss.
Oh, God.
Wow. That went a little far.
It would have to be a very short and passionate love affair because the white blood cell has at maximum, including activation and passive, 4 days, and whereas she's got 4 months. So, such a sad romance. It's a tragedy.
I really liked the character because of her reactions. The fact that the rest of these cells are old hat at body, right? White blood cell, even though he's supposedly the younger one, and they clearly skip over that in the story. He almost is always able to identify the problems coming into the body because he's seen them before. and he's like, "Oh yeah, there's a virus. Oh, there's a thing," and she just loses her mind every time.
Yep.
and I loved it. I actually thought that was one of the funniest elements. White Blood Cell himself has some of the funniest jokes, but her reaction scenes are great. And one thing about anime, overreactions to things for comedy works better in sub than dub almost every time.
Yeah,
they just freak out better.
Just like most everything else.
No,
Works better in sub than dub.
I was being nice. Olive branched out, and you just
I had to grab that olive branch, rip it out of your hand, and smack it on the ground.
Almost Christmas, man.
Where's the holly?
Okay. So while she's going about lost for her delivery, she is attacked by a pathogen. Specifically, it is pneumococcus, and she is saved by our other main character, White Blood Cell, who I would call White. He is a neutrophil, which they point out. What I loved about the episode 12, they're like, "This is a red blood cell." Yeah, I figured that out by now.
I know, right?
Do not need the description again.
But yeah, White. I'll call him White. He is our other main character. What do we think of him?
I kind of latched onto him for the episodic reasons. Just because I really liked his dryness. And now, just like he would go from, "Oh yeah, everything's great," to murder.
Yes.
And then flip. He's covered in blood. It would be like, "Oh yeah, no, you need to go this way."
You want some tea?
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Tea.
Yep. Yeah, all the same things. He was an awesome character. Yep.
I also like the way he just pops up. Like there's no like formal introduction for him or a reason for him to show up. There'll be a bug, and he's just like through the floor.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
It's episodic and it's not the anime for it, but I kind of was hoping for a little bit more of an arc because they started going into it that like you're bonding with these other cells, and sometimes our job is to murder the cells. We're not their friends, and they start kind of setting that up, and they only used it for a little bit of a joke. But I kind of wanted to see where that was going.
I bet you that'll be in the Black spinoff.
Maybe.
And from what I understand from the research that I did, the neutrophils are more oriented toward hostile invaders than like the killer T cells, and most T cells are more oriented towards eliminating contaminated host cells.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Which they kind of point out, like neutrophils are the first line of defense against invaders, and then the other ones like show up later to help. But like the killer T's, they're very much about we'll kill other cells if we do. That's our thing.
Another thing that was really interesting to me was that we look at the red blood cell, the white blood cell, the platelets, killer T, macrophage, all these other ones, and we see that they drew them as people, right? But then you have the bricks that make up the road, and you have the buildings, and they even call them like endothelial vascular cells. Like, you know that the road is more cells, but it's a road. And it was so funny to me, like they're walking on other people, but like we have to sort of adjust the way we're viewing this. And I like that. I like the representation of the common cells as well, because I always wondered what are they doing? Like these guys.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. It's like, well, there's so much more to unpack with these common cells. Let's just leave them for something else. We're going to focus on the immune system and red blood cells.
Yeah. I took it as kind of like, yeah, we're walking on cells, but they're represented by the buildings next to it that have just common cells in it, and just pretend that all makes sense, and then we'll just focus on the blood people. And really, this whole 90% of this anime is how the immune system works, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So, after White Blood Cell and his buddies kill a bunch of these bacteria, one manages to slip away. Red keeps getting lost. She heads into like a lymphatic node.
So
like,
great.
Why would you be here? She goes to the spleen. The macrophages yell at her. She ends up in a room, and that bacteria is just there. And
oh god, that was so funny when she opens the door.
So funny.
So good. He's like, don't act like nothing happened.
Yeah, because she sees him, they get like lock eyes, and then she just kind of slowly closes the door.
That was great.
Also, I kind of thought we'd get more from Red, because in this scene, she opens the door to leave, and there's more cells coming, and she doesn't want. It's either it actually might be a later scene, but she sacrifices herself basically because she doesn't want these other cells to die, which is not a cell thing. So this character had a little bit of a trait of being self-sacrificing. So after this scene, white blood cell shows up, saves her again. We see that this bacteria has a capsule, which is basically, in real life, it's a barrier around bacteria so they don't get eaten by the immune system. It helps protect them. He uses it as a shield in like an anime battle, or in this one actually it's a net. He casts it out and like grabs the white blood cell and stalls him. Which then, when White chases after him, Red's caught in it and she gets dragged behind across the body for the pursuit. So because of this, Red and White end up teaming up to get to the lungs because she believes that's probably where he's going. That was her guess, and White blood cell's like, well, I guess that's fine. So they travel together. He helps her get
pneumonia.
Yeah, it makes sense. When they get there, or on the way they meet the platelets, his receptor, his little antenna thing keeps ringing, which means there's a pathogen nearby. And he's like, okay, I guess I'm broken. And it wasn't part of him, though. That it's just like part of his hat.
Yeah, but I think it's the same way that like the red blood cell hat looks like a red blood cell. Like it's to indicate that, I don't know if it's cytokines that he's smelling from helper T cells, or if it's just him sensing the antigens from the pathogens.
Right. So they do meet the platelets here, but I want to talk about them in the next episode because they get their big scene. So we will come back to the adorable platelets. Basically in the lungs, when she gets there and goes to make her delivery, the box opens up and there is the bacteria hid in the CO2 box that she was trying to deliver. Now that he's in the lungs, there's a ton of nutrients for him to get. He goes to kill Red, and white blood cell pops out of the ceiling, and we learned neutrophils have the ability to travel throughout the body through a migration system, and so he can just come out of anywhere.
Yeah, what that actually means is that he can shift through any of the endothelial cells. So like, there's no particular locations that he can just shift through. He can just shift through wherever he needs to.
Right. So in real life, they're not going through the ventilation system.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Through walls.
Which there actually kind of are, if you look at the cellular structure of the walls of your vascular system. There actually are like these little systems, these little holes that you can go through, but they don't have to go through those.
Right. I do love how they're always popping out of a vent, or like they like push a grate up. They're like, hey.
Yeah, the joke of like, everything okay here? They battle again, but he's actually losing. I really like the joke in this scene because he's, White fights with a knife. The neutrophils, they all have knives that they battle with. And this is the one where the bacteria is blocking with his shield. And he's like, oh, I'm not powerful enough to get past that shield. And Red Blood Cell's like, maybe not say that out loud.
And it did. It like boosted the germ's confidence. And he's like, oh, really?
Basically, they battle out a stalemate until they reach the respiratory system, where the bug is caught in a trap, which is represented in this anime as a bubble that encapsulates him, loads him through a mechanical system into a rocket, and he is fired to a giant achoo.
Sneeze launch successful. Everybody like salutes the footage. I love that.
Right.
So that was mucus.
Right.
Catching him. That was so good.
Right. And so whether it's a sneeze or a cough, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah.
But the idea that that's why we sneeze and cough, that we're expelling germs that we caught in our trap. And then White and Red have a cup of tea before, will I ever see you again? Probably not. Except for every single episode of this anime.
12 more times. Also, the knives that Neutrophil carries around with him, neutrophils are like, they're granular, white blood cells, and so they've got like these little poison granules in them that when they connect up, they inject the poison granules, which is very much like melee combat if you think about it. So I thought the knives were a really, really good way to establish that idea.
That is cool. See, that's what I'm talking about. Like, the more you know, the more like, oh, I get why you did a knife. That makes sense. Yeah.
And he's got so many too, because they've got tons of these little granules in them.
And just like in this episode, we saw the platelets. We also do see our first images of helper T cell and killer T cell, but they definitely get more featured later. So we are going to talk about them in a bit. The next episode has to do with, if you can believe it, Red is lost while trying to deliver a package. We also meet her senpai in this episode, which I will be calling senpai. It's another red blood cell that taught her. Is there a reason for the senpais and the red blood cells helping other red blood cells, or is that more Japanese culture than actual cells?
It's totally got to be culture because, yeah. Nope.
Speaking of, one of the things I actually liked about this was the reflection of Japanese work culture to nonstop working in the body.
That's true.
Yeah, there's definitely a good parallel there. And this is where we truly meet the platelets. Our main platelet that we get to interact with is a little girl with long hair and her baseball cap.
Love how she keeps poking her cheek.
Yeah.
But all the platelets are portrayed as like small preschool children who go around carrying giant boxes and doing road construction all the time. And we see him here like washing the fibrin, which will come into play in a little bit. But what did you guys think of probably the third star of this show, the platelets?
I loved the platelets. Not only were they drawn and acted adorably, but I loved how, like, in every single disaster, not only do they show up and none of them end up getting hurt, but they're these tiny little preschoolers that have enormous pieces of equipment that they're just able to like spread across this enormous chasm. Like, what? But yeah, no, they definitely steal the show every time they're shown, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely adorable.
I love this scene that's actually right here in the anime where they have to carry the giant boxes down the stairs and like one at a time, and they fill it with all this drama and suspense as red blood cell stops to watch and what worries if they're going to make it.
Interestingly, they are actually much smaller cells than red blood cells and white blood cells. And also they do send out signals to call other blood cells to help them.
I one of the things I picked up from that YouTube channel was that they are actually related to red blood cells in the term that, you know, they came from the same basic cells. That's why they call red big sister. That there is actually a relation
that makes sense
connection there.
Come from progenitor cells. That makes sense.
Is there a reason white always seems to go out of his way to save them? Because I didn't see other white cells like picking up platelets and putting them on the shoulder, but white always seems to have like a platelet on his shoulder or is carrying them.
Yeah, white blood cells are specifically among those mentioned that platelets will call when they're working on things to help them out.
Okay.
To sites of injury.
I not only does it make sense scientifically, but I love that was an aspect of that character, that he was always looking out for these little adorable toddlers. It definitely endears you to him much faster.
Yep.
So in this episode, a giant explosion rocks the body because they were doing deliveries near the skin. They even say like, "Oh man, we gotta be careful. It's sensitive up here." And there's a giant explosion, which turns into this giant hole and just sucks people out. Like cells go flying to their death. And before Red can fall out, White manages to grab her and pull her back into the building. But this is a very tiny abrasion on the skin.
Yeah. In fact, the title of the episode is Scrape.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is just basic, slightly drawing blood, but it's like this devastating thing to them. And because of it, bacteria come flooding in, and White has to battle them while the other cells get away. They actually get pursued by more bacteria, and more white blood cells have to show up and help. But the white blood cells are losing their battle, and the leader of this gang of villains that have appeared is it's Staphylococcus, right? So staph infection. which actually in real life has the shape of yellow grapes.
Yep.
In a triangle. So her dress is like yellow grapes, which I thought was cool. But she starts talking smack. She's like, I've done my research, which is weird for a germ to say. She's like, the neutrophils show up, but the big guys, they don't show up for a while. The killer T cells, the macrophages, we got some time, and we're going to come flooding in. And not only are these characters adorable, but this moment is so fist pumping. Like this is shown in battle anime. Like White's like, you forgot about our other helpers, and marching in, here comes these little kindergartners. That's so good of a moment. And they take the fibrin that they've been working on this time, and they cast it across the giant hole, and they start activating it so it hardens and stickens, and that stops any more bacteria coming in. So the white blood cells, the neutrophils, win their fight because they run out of reinforcements. And the move White does, where he like leaps out over the chasm and slices out Staphylococcus and just falls into the safety of the net, is a cool moment.
Come to find out, there's a reason he doesn't move after landing.
Exactly.
Red, who there's a big aspect of this anime where Red is always thanking White for saving her, and that's actually what endears her to him, because he does this every day, all day, and she always takes the time to thank him. So she comes out and it's like, thank you. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And she's like, wait, why can't I move? He's like, don't you know this is sticky? And then another great scene, the platelets roping other cells in the fibrin and pulling them in.
Like, they have so much power, these little kids.
Right.
So basically this episode ends with, hey, we're going to be stuck here for like 3 days, as they jam these human people into the opening to form a scab.
Now, I didn't research it to verify this, but I think that the cells that get caught in the fibrin get dissolved as part of the resources for rebuilding things.
I can't imagine they get all crusty and hard like that and they get to go back into
right.
the
So like there were so many different moments where I'm like, well, they just died. Like our main characters just died.
Right.
So I actually started trying to put together a list, and I was thinking maybe the episodes are out of order. Because very soon here, when we deal with influenza, there's a moment where you're like, wait a minute, what happened? What happened? Did everybody die? Because it just cuts out and it's episode over. Are they dead? And they never address it again. And so I was like, that's got to be the last episode. That must be it. But then I started noticing that there are references to the previous episodes in the proper linear order of 1 through 13. So it's not out of order. So this is all just hypothetical fantasy, and these characters must be like generational memory for the red blood cells.
That's what I was gonna say. Maybe we're seeing a new red blood cell, but she has all the memories of the previous red blood cell every time.
I don't know what else it could be.
Speaking of influenza, that's our next episode.
Yeah,
which I thought was fantastic. That it's portrayed as zombies.
Mm-hmm. It was so perfect.
That honestly, if you had to sell someone on the show, that's what you do. You're like, hey, here's an episode about zombies, but it represents the flu virus. it totally works so well. So we start off with a naive T cell, who is like the regular killer T cells, but he's small and he's wimpy and he's weak and he's wandering in the darkness of the city, and he's attacked by these zombies. And White shows up and saves the day. And then more show up, right? They get overwhelmed. And poor Naive doesn't want to fight. He's not good at this. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to fight. And they're saved by one of the best characters in this anime, Macrophage, who is represented by beautiful women in maid outfits with giant weapons. Thoughts on Macrophage?
Not the only giant parts. I actually loved this character, and I know Jeremy did well. Yeah. And I think what really got me was the cutesy, I'm a maid, let me mama you. Oh, by the way, I want to go murder that thing, and I'm going to laugh the entire time.
Yes!
Just the expressionless, or just the joy on their face as they're carving up these bacteria with these enormous melee weapons.
Yep.
Just sold me on them.
Yeah, I absolutely loved macrophage. Every single time that a macrophage showed up, I was just ecstatic because even before she started taking part in the battles, I was like, I know what this is. I know what this is. This is a huge, voracious cell that has it's capable of phagocytosis on multiple hostile cells. I mean, she literally wraps herself around them in real life. Like the cell will wrap itself around them and hold them in a pocket and then go wrap around another one and hold it in a pocket and then digest it inside there. And so it's vicious in the best possible way that an immune system cell could be. And so, yeah, when I saw her, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they made her look so sweet and kind and loving and energetic. Because yeah, that's exactly what a macrophage is. They're there to preserve and to clean up. Mm-hmm. And it's perfect. But there's this excellent two sides of her that are just so contradictory, and I love it. Favorite character.
Also, I won't spoil it here, but the twist about this character, in a later episode just blew my mind. I was like, that's such a good story twist, and it's real.
Yep.
But yeah, the joke definitely works. The dual natures, they are also the parent cells, of the the red blood cells. They take care of them. But then, as Jeremy has pointed out, they also eat the dead cells later.
Yes. Uh-huh. Yep. Every time that white blood cell looked like maybe he was tired or wounded, or red blood cell looked like it, there were times when one of them would get an injury and they would actually say, oh, you got hurt. I'm like, uh-oh.
Where's my monster ready to strike?
Yeah.
So one important thing. So macrophage slays, these cells easily. She actually cuts off or takes a chunk out of one of the influenza. The virus is presented as like a thing on your brain, on your head that's sucking on you. And Jeremy told me that they actually look like that in real life.
Yep.
She takes the chunk out of it and calls it in like this is a type B influenza. That goes to the dendritic cell, who we'll talk about in a little bit. That goes to the command T cell, and the information is passed out. We're watching what really happens through a very different process in the human body of how they identify, bacteria and viruses. So it's really cool to see. I did want her to take a bite out of it, but we get enough. We do get that later. But I kind of thought it was weird they were holding it back here.
Yeah. I was sad when she didn't take a bite out of it. But there's also, I think it's a little bit inaccurate. And I want to say that maybe it's my error. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but both the macrophage and the dendritic cell are they will consume a bacteria or a pathogen, and then they will take that antigen and they will deliberately go over to a helper T cell and give it to them personally. So I don't know of any information indicating that a macrophage will send that information to a dendritic cell and have it take it to the helper T cell. That kind of confused me, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that does happen and I just couldn't find it, but I couldn't find anything about that.
Probably more just artistic storytelling and giving
that's what I was thinking too.
The dendritic cell more to do. The killer T's show up and the battle rages on against these zombies. They keep spreading. We see how fast they proliferate. I actually wrote this down from the anime. There could be 100 in an hour and 1 million over a day. They proliferate so fast. And so they just keep fighting. They keep fighting. And the killer T's, these big buff SWAT men who we should talk about because they are important characters. My favorite one though is the memory T cell because he has the little pink notebook with the information inside.
There's a prophecy.
No, that's
the memory cell.
That's memory B cell. But among the killer T cells are memory T cells. They're also in the SWAT outfit, except for they have little pink notebooks with stickers on them that they tell the killer T's what to do. I really like that. But what did you guys think of the main? Our main killer T guy, who's the blonde guy with the spiky hair coming out of his hat. He's the one who was always talking with White. They seem to know each other. I mean, if you've seen the anime, you know who I mean.
Extremely tropey character, but I did like he became very endearing once we get his backstory later on. But besides that, I love his banter with Natural Killer, which we'll come to later. Their banter back and forth was gold. So,
yep, yeah, I thought the same thing.
Yeah, I really liked him despite the tropes. It works in this setting. Again, there was another. He was the character that presents the "we can't be friends with the cells we might have to kill someday," and then they actually just play it off as a joke of he's just jealous.
Yeah,
and again, I would have liked to have seen some of that played out or explored without getting too harsh. But I mean, it's definitely a factor of these cells' life if we're going to give them personalities. The naive cell is too afraid to fight, and he ends up running away from the battle, and he ends up with the dendritic cell, who gives him some words of encouragement by both showing him pictures of the killer T cells when they were naive in their early days, and just kind of letting him know how to fight. And he goes through a Super Saiyan transformation,
which is fantastic, by the way.
Yep.
It looks exactly like a JoJo Bizarre type of scene.
Which makes sense now that we know who the studio behind this anime is.
Yeah. I think my favorite part was how after he had gone through this transformation, he then says, "And I proliferated," and there's like 12 of them now. That was awesome. So good.
Before we go on with him, I do want any thoughts on dendritic cell. He's my favorite. I just love that this tree guy is just sitting in his tree, making calls, making cells Super Saiyans. I don't know why the character and the way he's always sneaking photos. I just love the sneakiness of the character in a good nature way.
I liked him. He definitely wasn't my favorite because we only get like 3 episodes with him, I think.
Yeah, he only pops up once in a while.
But yeah, I love the endearment of, oh, I know why he's that way, and I'll show you.
Yes, there was something about how even when the killer T cells were trying to get back a notebook later, and he's like, nope, dodging, you can't touch me, nope. Very, very fun character. And for me, knowing that like the macrophage and the dendritic cells are siblings, basically they come from the same parent, that it was very interesting to see 2 different takes on very, very similar cells. They basically do the same thing, just in different places. Very different personalities they decided to use. It was nice.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like Jeremy said, now the immune system cells, the white blood cells who are getting overrun by the influenza, they suddenly have all these naive. Well, they're not naive cells anymore. They're
activated cytotoxic
infectors.
Cells. Yeah, effectors.
Yeah, and so they're these huge hulking buff dudes, and they just go to town. And we get another helper who's going to feature into a lot of episodes coming up, B Cell. So again, quick thoughts on B Cell, the guy with the gun, who basically is there to spray antibodies on anything they tell him to spray antibodies on.
I found him kind of irritating.
Oh, wow!
I didn't really like this character. But.
Is it because he was just kind of like the kid that wanted to be a part of it, but he wasn't like with the tough guys? It was like he just wanted to be there and tag along and play, but thought he was cool.
So like in the opening, it shows him spraying this huge area and like just taking out this swath of things. And in the show, it shows him maybe hit 1 or 2 things at a time. And it's like, okay, what do you do? Why are you here? Why are you useful?
I see. Yeah, when I researched
and also,
him,
he had a mouth, which
when I researched him and I saw like how his gun was fashioned, like Troy said earlier, after the antibody, and how the cell is actually, it forms like this plasma blast and it starts releasing all the antibodies into plasma, basically, and so it just proliferates out there and it just goes and spreads instead of having to ever actually get in contact with any hostile or corrupted cells. He just is kind of pushing out the antibodies into the ether. And I thought that the water gun, the squirt gun, was such a great way to symbolize that. So yeah, and he didn't bother me so much as a character. I enjoyed his argument later with the regulatory T cell.
Yeah, I for what his role was, I thought he was the perfect trope for this spot, right? Because like you said, he doesn't have the knife. He's not attacking the germs, but he's like, yeah, I'm the hot shot coming to save the day. And everyone's like, you suck. You get to stand in the back and shoot a gun. Get out of here.
Yes.
And how quickly all the cells turn on him when something is his fault too.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, he's spraying the antibodies. We have these giant cells, and they win the day. But they say they battle for a whole week. And when they talk about symptoms, like they turn up the heat in the world, so that'll to help with the battle, which gives a fever and all the other things. I do love how they portray stuff like that. Like, oh, we need to make the heat, and then they say, by the way, this was a fever.
Yeah.
Or the histamine. That was pretty great.
The episode.
No.
The episode ends with the battle won. It's a week later, and then another zombie shows up, and the superpowered naive T cell's like, I got this, and he goes up to punch him and just gets swatted away, and everyone's like, wait, what? And they realize, oh, this is a type A supervirus.
Yep.
It turns the infactor cell back into a naive T cell, and they have to start the process all over again.
Yep. Which that's another thing. I don't think that happens. You can't reverse that, because once you receive the antigen, you have changed your structure. I don't think you can take it out.
Oh yeah, no, but they would need a new set of naive T cells to tell, okay, let's go attack this virus. And so if this character represents all cells, which I think is how you kind of have to think of these characters, they kind of represent the class more than a individual cell.
I would agree with you, except that they showed like all these killer T cells were naive cells. So like they kind of ruined that themselves. But otherwise, yeah, I agree.
Fair enough. And so the episode ends with Dendritic making his call again. And then the next episode, probably not one of my favorites. We do meet a new character, and I'll just talk about her before we get into the story. Eosinophil.
Yeah, Eosinophil.
She's the character in all pink. She has the spear. What did we think of her?
I liked her. It was one of those endearing anime tropes of, oh, I can't do anything, but I'm really good at this one thing, which worked out really well for this cell. And her, it was, yeah, her, shyness was endearing too. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's another granular, and granular white cell. So she has granules in her as well, but the granules are specially oriented for a specific kind of target. Right. And that target is one that I absolutely hate in all of its forms. And so for that reason alone, I was like, I don't care how you present this character. I love this character because I hate her enemy.
I did like the character, and I especially love the almost tsundere about her, like you're so awesome, and she gets all blushy and shy. I'm like, oh, well, that's cool that trope got in here. I guess she's not in the anime a ton, but when she is on screen, because of that trait, she very much stands out.
Yeah.
So I'll do this episode a little bit quicker, but basically white and red run into Eosinophil, losing a battle to a pathogen. And all the cells basically talk behind her back of like, why does she suck? Why is she even part of the immune system? What's going on here?
Why is she so bad?
And she does. She sucks at fighting germs, but she's always there trying, and White respects her. He clearly does, and he's willing to help her. And then at the same time, we meet Basophil, who I didn't mention. Not much must be known about Basophil.
Awesome. Actually, no, he's okay. I was wrong when I said that the argument between B cell and the T regulatory, or the regulatory T cell, it was between B cell and mast cell. Yeah, I misspoke myself there. But basophil is basically the same thing as mast cell, just in different parts of the body. So everything that you saw her doing with heparin, which we'll talk about later, and histamine, he has the same ability, but he is in a different part of the body. And so he's more of like I'm going to regulate things, and I'm going to, call and cause the body to have different kinds of homeostasis reactions to things. And so I love the fact that they have him as like this overly melodramatic poet that's walking around in a raincoat with an umbrella, like making
what's
all
with the ninja get up?
Oh, I think it's just him like being mysterious because all he does is like touch things from the outside. He doesn't actually get in there with a weapon and do any damage, but he regulates. He's like the mage or the wizard that's like, I'm gonna alter the system around you and kill you by making your environment hostile.
I guess my assumption was that we know the cell shows up. It does something. We're just not 100% sure what he does.
It's true.
So let's portray him as a ninja who just is there.
So great.
His pros won the day.
But basically the body gets food poisoning, which has a bunch of new bacteria hitting the stomach. So they fight that. White actually gets eaten at one point and slices his way out of the mouth.
I love red blood cells reaction when he does this.
All red blood, like you could just put a stream of red blood cell reactions together, and I would watch it every day.
They're pretty great.
Yep.
And unfortunately, things get even worse. And what does Basil Phil say? Like the floodgates of hell will open.
Exactly,
because the body has to vomit, basically. And then a giant intruder hits, and it's actually a full-on parasite. It's not a cell. It's not a bacteria. It's a monster.
It's a nematode.
Yep. And this is where Eos and Phil, she walks forward. She's like, "All right, I'm going in."
This is my jam.
And she sends that creature back to the pits of hell.
And I love it too that like the weapon she carries is kind of like a harpoon, right? It's a trident kind of thing, a two-pronged trident. Right. It's perfect for fighting giant sea creatures, which a lot of parasites resemble that. Mm-hmm. And so this was a really great way to like build up the character design to match this. Absolutely love it.
And I did love the size difference. Like this thing was Godzilla size compared to everyone else.
Yep.
Even though some of the other sizes don't really correlate with that, because like the macrophages are way bigger than a lot of these things they're eating, and so and actually a lot of the bacteria are presented as like, I'm a giant monster, and it's like, you should be smaller.
Yeah. The nematode is actually considerably bigger because they're visible to the naked eye very easily.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So, like I said, she saves the day and she gets praised for her work, which just embarrasses her because she's used to being like the one who sucks,
Yeah.
And then probably my favorite episode, it comes up next, because ever since I learned that poison ivy literally has no ill effect on the human body, I've been fascinated by how much allergies suck.
Right?
Yeah.
So the next episode is about cedar pollen. And this whole story is just the perfect example of how your body just doesn't do things perfectly every time. It's just it's like White's blood cell says at the end of this episode, we all did our jobs. Why did things get so bad?
What happened?
Yeah, we followed the manual.
Yeah.
So basically, a meteor strikes the eye, and I guess in Japan, this is this is really bad. That cedar pollen's a huge deal over there.
I love the way the cedar pollen is portrayed.
Cedar.
So basically, these meteors crack open. There's these big yellow glob things, and macrophage, calls in. We spilled our tea. This is bad to command. One of these cedar pollens finds its way to red, and she freaks out, and it's like cedar. Like they're the most pathetic, harmless giant blobs you've ever seen. And of course, White shows up and he kills it. And they're like, "What is it?" He's like, "I will find out." Arr! He starts eating it right in front of her.
I loved it. I have written in my notes, "Oh my god, he's finally eating it!" Yes.
This actually felt like a weird one to start with, but oh well.
Yeah. I mean, it's like eating a giant booger, but yeah.
And then we're introduced to the memory cell, which is actually a B memory cell, or a memory B cell. Opposite. Basically, they tell the guy with the gun what to put in the gun, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I've heard of this day. There's a prophecy.
This is so good.
This guy was another one of my favorite side characters, by the way.
Yeah, let's talk about it. What do you think?
I loved the scene where he's just smashing his head against the wall. Why can't I remember?
Yep. I loved the melodramatic, prophecy of the end of the world. And no, you think it's bad? We're only on the third plague. Like, it gets so much worse. And every step of the way, he's like just getting more and more energetic and dramatic about how bad it's going to be. I loved it.
Yeah, I really liked him. I love the way they use the joke. He even steals one of the scenes of the intro, when the scene where he's like flipping through the book and he just starts freaking out. Just this guy who reads books all day, and when something real starts happening, all his knowledge, all it does is stress him. Like it just doesn't help him. And that's the character, right? Not the actual cell, but I did like how that worked for the character. So yeah, these cedar pollens start running amok, and the body starts taking its natural reactions. And first off, we have B cell, who fires his IgE antibodies onto the cedar pollen, and it's killing them. And it's great. And then we get to mast cell. Quick thoughts on this book, by the book manual using cell, who's not a fat cell. She's called a fat cell, not actually a fat cell.
I love how they pointed that out like 4 times.
Yeah. I love that B cell actually uses it to insult her, like, "You're fat cell." That was great. She was a lot of fun. I enjoyed her as a counterpoint to B.
Right.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, she wasn't in there enough to like really latch onto her as far as a character, but I did like her presence.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you guys pointed out, I thought the fat cell joke worked because they kept bringing it up and then brought it up into dialogue.
Yep.
So basically, her reaction is when she detects all this IgE in the body, the manual says produce histamines to match. And this is a hilarious scene because at first a tube comes out of the ceiling and everyone's like, "Oh, I guess they're going to spray some histamine." And then it goes back up, and like, okay. And then a giant one bigger than the whole screen goes down.
It looks like the engine of like the largest rocket you've ever seen.
Yeah.
It comes down from the ceiling,
and everyone's face is just like, no,
don't do this.
So basically, histamine gets flooded all over, and we see reactions. We see it hits the secretion center and causes malfunction, so sneezing starts to begin. There's swelling, so the city's walls start like rising up and pushing things around. Basically, utter chaos begins within the body. The dam of tears breaks. So these are all allergy reactions, which again, the allergies are not causing. They didn't do anything.
Nope.
And then, the cells start getting mad. They're yelling at B cell. He's yelling at mast cell. Everyone's like, "It's your fault. It's your fault." And then Red shows up. "I got a delivery." Knocks over White. It's this giant ball. It says for medical use. It opens up and a robot steps out and starts murdering everybody.
Literally anything in sight.
Yes.
It's got a Gatling gun. It's got lasers. It's just destroying. And I love
Brilliant
that they present it as a robot, right? Because it's this artificial thing that's brought into the body and then travels through the bloodstream, not actually carried by a red blood cell. But I thought for sure, though, this was going to be antihistamine. And it's not. It's actually a steroid, which they even say, like, don't use steroid too much. Yeah.
Yeah, they are indiscriminate.
Now, steroids don't actually attack the cells. I assumed he was trying to like knock down the inflammation, right? Like he's trying to break, because he was shooting the walls a lot, I thought. Or maybe they were just being artistic and like he's a Terminator, he shoots everything he sees.
If I remember correctly, yes, they do actually do some damage to the cells, but I can't remember how they do it. Yeah.
And then again, it ends with White being like, why? We just did our jobs. Everyone did their job correctly, and we just made things so much worse. And it's like, yeah, body, learn from that. All right.
I remember what it is. It's because the mitochondria are very similar to bacteria, and so when they can bind, these hormones are soluble in fat, and so they can actually get through cell membranes, and they can get to parts of cells that are like mitochondria, and they can actually damage them. And so so they are damaging in that way.
Mm-hmm. No one actually dies from the steroid though. Just like I said, it causes utter chaos.
Just building cells, floor cells.
Okay, so I called that my favorite episode, but as far as story arc, this one actually both terrified me and made me emotional. And I think a lot of people point to this episode when they talk about Cells at Work is good anime or great anime. They're like, "Have you seen that episode?" And that's the one we're on here. It starts off pretty light and breezy. It has Red getting lost into the bone marrow, seeing baby new red blood cells who are erythroblast.
Yeah, erythroblasts.
Yep, being raised by the macrophages. They see him graduate. I love the what's it called? Enucleation day, where they just take out the puffball, becoming a red blood cell.
Yep,
that was so cool. And we see a quick flashback of her as a child getting attacked by bacteria after getting lost during a drill. And then being saved by a neutrophil, who we recognize as white. She does not. So they've been doing this since they were little kids.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot of consequences to that. But then after this, we join up with White, who attacks these weird cells that are attacking the body, him and Killer T. And they save this common cell. And then a new cell shows up to help them. NK, also known as natural killer cell.
She's awesome.
Yeah, we got to talk about it. Thoughts on NK?
Again, semi-tropey. Just headstrong battle anime hero is really the best way to put it. But her relationship with Killer T Cell just sold it for me, because that was pretty great.
Yep. Yeah, I love the fact that what we're seeing between her and Killer T is the innate immune system and the adaptive immune system, because the natural killer is part of the innate immune system. And so she's just basically looking for whatever. It doesn't matter what any kind of antigen. She's just looking for anything that doesn't belong. She can recognize something that they call self. And so basically it's a pattern that exists in the cells in the host body. And if that's not there, or if it's screwed up, she can go after these cells that are corrupted. And they actually make a call out to that at one point where she's like, yeah, they didn't notice that you don't have a self. And so I absolutely loved that they had the conflict between the two of them, and they worked it all in and gave her this personality, and even the depth to where she's like, yeah, I just wanted them to leave because I knew they were too weak to do anything. Right. So like there was enough depth that she wasn't just headstrong, but it was good. I liked her character.
Yeah. Her power up move took me by surprise, that we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, I did like the character. And the fact that like her knife is not almost a little, it's a dagger. It's like
it's like a saber, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, that's my favorite part of the opening is her scene in it, because she does like a slash, and then her arm ends up back here, and she does this quick little flick and like cuts another one in half before she goes for another slash. Like that I always look for that.
Yep. So trying to investigate what's going on, Killer T, White, and NK all go with this common cell to where these cells came from. And again, White had a conversation with them, was like, we're probably gonna have to kill your friends, and the common cell's like, yeah, that's fine. We'll do that. They head out. Killer T and White separate. They go in one direction, and NK goes with the common cell. And then when they're alone, what Jeremy was talking about, NK calls him out, and she's like, so you want to tell me who you really are? You want to tell me what's really going on here? And he's like, oh, you caught me, did you? And then we find out that he is a cancer cell.
We find out this is a crossover to Tokyo Ghoul.
Exactly.
It's a little bit like that. That's absolutely true. Guys, thoughts on Cancer Cell, who I thought made enough of a story impact to call out as a character, unlike all the other
dude,
pathogens.
broke my heart, but it like mirrors real cancer so well.
Yeah.
Even its origins, we get an origin story for the only bad guy in this whole thing. And then at the end, he's just like, I just wanted to exist like the rest of you. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
right, but you're going to murder everyone.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. It's cancer. It's just anaerobic. But it was brilliantly done.
Yes.
Yeah, making Cancer a sympathetic character, many would consider one of the worst scourges of humankind, right? Because F Cancer.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, watching this episode.
Yeah, it made me actually be like, wow, that Cancer character, I feel so bad for.
So he turns into his real form, which is white. He's very mutated looking. And he can even like reach into the cell walls and then pop out another cell wall. He's got all these superpowers. He's actually a pretty cool villain too.
Yeah,
he stands out compared to the rest of them. And NK can hold her own a little bit, but she ends up getting beat. Meanwhile, White and Killer T are investigating their area, and they find like the laboratory where the cancers have been proliferating. And yeah, man, I wish I knew more or had time to really study that scene, because there's a ton of stuff on that wall, and I really wanted to know like why is that there? What's all this information? And I know the manga of Cells at Work goes into more of Cancer. He actually comes back. There's a Cancer 2 story arc.
Really?
cool.
Which they kind of hinted at in this story arc. He's like, you beat me for now. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They definitely hinted at that. So I really wonder like what's going on with that laboratory. What's the anyway, and maybe nothing, but
Yeah.
but yeah, they get attacked then by a bunch of cancer cells, and Cancer gets all three of them together and then tells them like, I'm just gonna kill you all.
Yeah.
I hate you guys. You guys are the worst. And then we find out like he's even like part of the building too. Like he makes the building collapse because he's corrupted it with his powers.
Mm-hmm.
We also get a scene of Red having bad luck as she's like, something's wrong. Something's off in the body. But Red eventually does see like huge caravans of nutrients and oxygen going to one building. She's like, what's going on? They're like, we don't know. We got to order. We got to deliver it. And what I really liked about this is that when they deliver it, when they see inside and they see the cancer cells feasting away on these nutrients, they're like, oh my God, that's horrifying. Let's go get the next shipment.
Yeah.
They have to still do their job.
Right.
Yep.
But Red actually goes and tells Macrophage what she saw. Like, something's weird going on over there. Meanwhile, we get a flashback of Cancer who, this is actually the part that terrified me, because they're like, yeah, cancer cells just get created in every body. That just happens. Sometimes cells go to duplicate and they F it up. And then you have a cancer cell. And hopefully your NKs find it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually really interesting when you get into how RNA transcription and translation into proteins works. It's actually pretty simple what happens to make the cancer appear. And there are so many different possible solutions that are out there that I really hope, like in the second time that they bring Cancer up in the manga, I hope that they hit some of those alternative ways to deal with it, because there's a multitude of ways, and only one or two of them ever really get the light of day nowadays.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically, the cancer's winning the battle, and then the immune system shows up, right? The macrophages, the killer T's, everyone comes to the battle and overpower him. But NK needing to be the one that defeats him, right? That's her job. She says, B-cell, shoot Killer T. Killer Killer T gets blasted in the face by the antibodies. Again, I don't think this is a real thing at all, but it makes her laugh. And this they call it is fact that laughter makes natural killer cells more powerful. She gets a Super Saiyan charge up and she slays Cancer, but it's White who goes to finish him off, and they have a conversation. And this is where Cancer's like, I'm a cell too. I'm one of you, and I wanted to live. And from the moment, and having watched children be hunted down by the immune system and slayed, you feel this emotion.
Yeah.
He's like, I just wanted to exist, and I was just fighting for survival. He's like, yeah, but you would have ended the world. He's like, yeah, but I was kind of okay with that.
And we're like, we're not.
Yep. We need this world.
And this was the whole, you beat me for now.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that cracked me up the most was how, and this I hadn't noticed it until this point. This character who had so much personality and so much life, and I'd come to empathize with him a little bit and care when he died, right? The next time you see him after this conversation, he's just kind of laying there and his face is turned toward the camera and he's got these big black X's over a gray bar over his face. And I'm like, wait, that's how it's so comical. It's like a silly dead with his character. And it was such a contrast that from then on, anytime there was combat and a germ was killed, I was like, is it there? Are the black X? Yes, they are. Okay.
They were there from the very first episode.
I never even noticed it until this character.
So the very first episode when he was like, they slice through him. They're like, blood spurting everywhere. I was like, what kind of anime is this? And then they do a conversation. They go back to the dead bodies and then big cartoon X's. And like, oh, okay, that's what kind of anime it is.
I mean, that makes sense. This is educational. It's definitely for a younger audience, and there's a lot of violence of people being slayed, and you have to remind them, like, no, it's cool, it's cartoon, it's funny, I'm cool.
Looney Tune biology.
The next episode, we won't go into too much, but even though it's a major growth episode for Red, because we see her go through a entire delivery process, right? We see her go through the chambers of the heart, do the long drop off the CO2, pick up the O2. One of the reasons I ship White and Red is this episode.
Because he's always helping her.
Yeah, he literally spends the day helping her get her job done, like putting up signs, go this way.
Throws her notes back at her. How'd they come back?
And making sure she never sees him.
When she's getting towards the end, when she's going to make delivery, and the two bacteria are waiting in the alleyway for her, and he shows up and just, don't you touch it. And it has to hide the bodies before she sees them. Was pretty great.
Then another T still shows up. He's like, here, take these.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is basically, you could call this episode Red's Big Day, because we actually see her go for a whole delivery, manage to figure out a map, get to where she wanted to go, and you learn a lot about the heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do. This was more education than it had the entertainment, like you've already pointed out all these things, but the percentage of education versus entertainment I thought was much higher on this episode.
Yeah, because it wasn't really funny that they were in the heart. It was just like, oh, here's a room with a gong, and which I liked, but like you said, it was definitely more in the education episode. And this was, I felt, one of the lesser rated episodes because of the less comedy. And then at the end of this episode is where White, he tells Killer T, like, oh man, she did it. Like, isn't that great? And Killer T punches him. He's like, we're not their friends. We are the ones who kill them. If something goes wrong. Yes, we protect them too, but we could also be their killers. So we're assassins. We don't have friends. And then as he's walking out, he sees like macrophages or something on Killer B having friends. And he's like, everyone sucks.
Yeah.
Which then, interesting enough, we go into his backstory. So we get the episode of the origin of Killer T and Commander T. So this is probably a good time to talk about Commander T Cell, who went to the same boot camp that Killer T did, but now wears glasses and is much skinnier than he used to be. And he drinks tea and gives orders. And sometimes he causes allergies to go out of control. Thoughts on him. Thoughts on Commander T-Cell.
I thought it was really cool because the way that the helper cell or the way that the progenitor cells differentiate into the different T cells, the different types where you have helper and killer, and then you also have regulation or regulatory,
who we meet in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was nice to see the dynamic between them and how the anime will justify why this guy goes into the helper category. Because when I first saw him, I thought, oh, okay, yeah, strategist, nerdy guy, but getting his backstory, he earned that spot. It was very interesting to see.
Well, we saw him throughout the episodes, like on the big screen,
Mm-hmm.
or we get glimpses of him, doing commander stuff or just sipping tea with macrophage. But getting backstory was pretty great.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, I thought the backstory really helped flesh him out that we needed. So it was good. I kind of wish, and I don't really have her list to talk about. I kind of wish we got more stuff about regulatory. She's just kind of witnessing this episode, even though this episode is kind of also her introduction. I thought that was odd. We didn't really talk a lot about her in the episode.
The dynamic between the three of them is really fascinating when you get to really dig into how the differentiation takes place, because essentially what I will call, and it's probably not the correct term, but like the naive version or the undifferentiated version of the T cell is like testing itself and to find out, how's it going to respond to host cells. And when it responds not strongly enough or too strongly, it's possibly going to be a regulatory cell, or it will just be killed. And
which we see here.
Yes. And so this was really cool because like her character as a regulatory cell, her job is basically to suppress the immune system. So it's her job to kind of tell them when to back off. And so seeing her dynamic with them as they were growing up was really cool, because I kind of got that sense that that's exactly what she was doing. She was controlling them, or at least sitting like right outside of them and paying attention and watching them like a hawk while they were having their own interactions.
When they found out they were roommates, that makes sense. I think about that.
Yeah.
So this episode is mostly a flashback as Dendritic Cell tells the other trainees about the truth about Killer T and Command T. They went to the same boot camp. They had the same thymic epithelial T cell trainer. And basically Command T was who I call Lil Command. He was awesome. He was efficient. He was strong. He was good at it. Little Killer, not so much. He kind of sucked. He reminded me of Naruto.
Little Killer.
Little Killer. This episode had very much of a Naruto Sasuke vibe in their relationship in the beginning. There's the elite, and then there was the guy who sucked and he's trying to get good, especially since he's got blonde spiky hair.
Get good, bro.
They end up becoming roommates. They end up becoming kind of rivals, and we see Little Killer working really hard, but he's just not. He's like not smart about it, right? He pounds a log until his fists are bloody with stupid attack names, very anime attack names.
Yes.
While Command is like going off and training in precise moves. So we come to the big test day. They've had tests, but like this is the biggest test, and they basically are sent into a maze, and then the objects come out of the fog at them, and whether they attack it or not determines if they pass or fail. Sometimes it's a good thing, and some like a cell they need to save, and they're all like, oh, that's a guy wearing a towel on his head, or that's a guy eating a bonbon. It wasn't a virus.
That's a guy with a sewing kit.
It felt very Men in Black 1 when they were doing the treatment.
Yes.
Like, oh no, that alien just has a barbell, and the other. Oh, that girl, she had a book on quantum mechanics. That could be good.
But like Jeremy pointed out, if they mess up, a hatch opens up beneath them, and they're just gone. And they're dead. They just kill them.
Yep, that means apoptosis in this, which is like disintegration of the cell membrane.
Little Command goes, even though now he's teenager Command, I guess, and he does really well. When he comes out, he gives advice to Killer T. He says, you always close your eyes when you first attack. Do not close your eyes when you attack. Killer T does that, doesn't kill the thing he's not supposed to kill, but when he gets attacked by something he is supposed to kill, he can't see it. He's having trouble finding it, and Command T yells out the attack name, the anime attack name from before, which causes him to like freak out and kill the thing
with his head, like he jerks backwards.
So they end up having a conversation. Basically, Killer T, like, you need to work hard and you need to do it, but you've never given up, so don't give up now. And then Command Cell's like, I'm pretty good at getting people to do stuff. I think I can do this. And I thought it was interesting that Command T, that like he's much skinnier and non-athletic now.
Yes.
Compared to then. Like they clearly show he has changed into this. He's not still an awesome guy, but now he's just behind the desk.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. And then they chase around Dendrick Cell trying to get the photographs back in real time.
Yep.
The next episode, it's kind of the usual stuff. Red gets attacked by a bacteria, but White doesn't show up. A monocyte does, which are these guys in like hazard suits with spray nozzles, and it saves her. And it's like super awkward. Like it just gives thumbs up, and then it goes and it's practicing its golf swing over by itself, like in the middle of the street. It's like bumbling around. It's like, and she's like, I don't know what that is. And White shows up when he's telling her that that's a monocyte. They help us. They're part of the system. Through the rest of the episode, which takes place in the nasal cavity, there's another abrasion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Staphylococcus comes back, and she's like, "You killed my cousin." And there's a bunch of them, and they fuse into one giant one, which is where Staphylococcus gets the grape shape from. And not only do they fuse and can shoot laser beams out their hands, they pick up the fibrin from the platelets and use it as both a shield and a whip. Or like they grab all the white blood cells, the neutrophils, and are beating them on the ground. And then all these monocytes show up, and they're like, "We're here to get you," but they're not carrying the sprayers; they're carrying giant melee weapons. And they walk a little forward. They turn back, like, "Oh, we just left the blood vessel." And they take off their suits, and they're the macrophages. Yep. Blew my tiny little mind, guys.
It was so much more of a payoff this moment, because earlier in the episode, like, Red's watching one of these, people in this suit, and they like go to take a drink, but their back's turned, so they can't see him when they take off the mask. And then this guy in this hazmat suit goes up against the wall, and then like the wall goes whoop, and then they're gone.
Yep.
Also, earlier in the anime, we've seen macrophages and monocytes hanging out together, having tea together, and they just
and in the opening.
Yep, and they haven't been explaining who this weird guy in a hazmat suit is. So to find out, oh no, we're just macrophages. We just kind of change a little bit depending on our location.
Right.
Well, and the interesting thing too is the monocyte can differentiate into dendritic cells as well.
Oh, can they?
And they can also differentiate into something called a foam cell, which is not a great thing. But yeah, this, unfortunately, I had already discovered that because I was doing research with every single episode, and I was having my fun that way. And so I was like, I know what that is, but it was still great to see.
And they just beat the living crap out of Staphylococcus. Other things, I really enjoyed the sauna of the nose in this episode.
Gross.
Oh, no. Gross. In the last episode, in the flashback, when they're talking by the river's yellow.
Right.
Yes.
And I was like, also a great line from this was when Red comes up to the macrophage and she's like, "Wait, I didn't know." And she's like, "Lady has to have her secrets."
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's other than that, it's very by the book or by the numbers episode, but really, really great twist at the end that really sealed it up. The next episode deals with the body is getting very, very hot, and we need to remember this episode for when we come up with our theories of what this body is. The red blood cells are marching, trying to cool it down. The sweat is no longer evaporating off the skin, so cooling down is not happening that way. What's really cool is basically white joins red. Everyone's hot. We're having heat stroke. Vertigo sets in, so the lights in the body start going out. And I thought that was a really cool touch. And plus the dizziness and the fainting, they actually feel the body fall over. Everything tumbles down. In this episode, basically, there's not enough sweat in the reservoirs, which means, obviously the body needs water. And they're just way too overly hot. And we see all the things the body does to try to stay cool. Meanwhile, at the same time, a special bacteria that's heat resistant has entered the body, and White's chasing it. Now, they do call out this has nothing to do with heat stroke. It's just a bad coincidence for this body, right?
This is actually called Bacillus cereus, and it's the cause of fried rice syndrome in Japan. And what the problem is that this bacteria will sit in fried rice that's been sitting at room temperature for a very long period of time and multiply because it can ferment. It's facilitative anaerobic, so it can ferment to make its energy, and then it can also survive in the body with oxygen.
Right. So this episode is both the body is trying to react to its heat, and White, who is personally starting to feel heat stroke because he wears such heavy clothes and stuff, is trying to chase this bacteria that is thriving inside the body. It's like hiding in the shadows. It's getting away whenever it wants.
It's like magically flying everywhere.
Right. One of my favorite parts, though, was when whoever the commander is, who's in charge of water, comes back in like the tribal suit and starts doing a rain dance inside the body.
We've done everything we can. It's time to pray to the god.
Chief lost his mind.
Yeah, the human that controls this world, apparently.
That one was really funny. But basically, White Sea Cell gets cornered on a cliff. He tries to fight back, but he eventually gets knocked down by the bacteria and falls to his doom. And almost right at that moment, light comes down from the sky, and a giant tube comes in, and water
I laughed so hard.
Basically, the human got a infusion of
Yep. Time for an IV.
Yeah. The bacteria who's floating around like, what's all this water? Where'd all this water come from? And then White emerges from it. Die!
Yes. I loved it. I loved the scene because it's like Red and a couple of platelets, and they're talking, and they're like, I wonder where White is. And in the background, you see like these spouts of blood shooting up into the sky. Oh, there he is. We probably shouldn't go bother him. And you hear the poor germ just screaming death wails the whole time.
So great.
Because he was picking on White so bad for like the majority of this episode.
Targeting that White.
Yes.
The next episode, Red, again, she's doing better at her job, so they give her a kohai. Guys, years of watching anime, and I've heard the term senpai so many times. I have never heard the term kohai. I was so excited to learn what the opposite of a senpai was. And it's just because senpais don't refer to their kohais as kohais. They call them by their names, where the kohai would always refer to, in the honorary title, senpai.
Mm-hmm.
Which this was also my first time hearing
Me too.
kohai.
Yeah, I turn to my kids and they're like, Dad, haven't you watched anime before? I'm like, no one says it in anime. Like, you hear senpai every day, every episode.
Yep.
So thank you. Even if I didn't learn about the body every single time, I learned something from this anime. But basically, she gets a rookie red blood cell to train, who's way more knowledgeable than her already. She's like, this is how the body functions. This is where we go. This is what we need to do. And Red is trying to teach her what she's been learning. And the blood cell's like, no, I know how to do the job. I get that. You don't need to. Probably one of the funniest scenes is when they find White. He's fighting a bacteria, and Red takes the time to introduce him and tells White, tell him about all the white blood cells, or tell her about all the white blood cells, while he's murdering this thing and eating it and trying to get rid of it. He's having to explain.
And she's just like, we should go. And Red's like, no, he's really nice. And he's like biting it.
Yeah, and that particular bacteria, it's like its head is shaped like a tooth because it's part of dental plaque.
Oh, is it?
Yes, that's why it was like absorbing, like wrapping itself on him like a big slime monster. Absolutely
so
love
cool.
this. Yeah, I was like, okay, if I was ever going to be taught anything in the body, I want White to teach it to me like this, because this is great.
So, basically what happens in this episode is a huge explosion, much bigger than the abrasions were. And it's up in the head area, right?
Mhm.
So the body starts losing a ton of blood, and they're ordered to rush to the center of the body first. And the blood pressure begins to rise, so they're all carried over. And what's happening is it's someone say the word for me.
Hemorrhagic shock.
Yes. Basically, the blood loss is so much that they're actually in mortal danger for the real first time. Like, they're actually going to die here. And all the white blood cells are ordered to the wound to start fighting off the bacteria. White gets there and there's just no cells there. He's like, where is everybody? And he finds one common cell. Common cell's like, everyone just got sucked out. Everyone's gone. Yeah. And meanwhile, Red is doing her deliveries. They're rushing as fast as they can. But every time when they get to the lungs, there's this huge overstorage of oxygen, and they realize there's just not enough red blood cells to keep going to oxygen. Whenever they deliver oxygen, they find cells who are suffocating, and they can't breathe. I actually felt bad because they're like, I can't breathe. She's like, I'm just going to leave this right here. I'm like, just put it to his mouth or something.
Yeah, I gotta say, when the eruption happened and then the cascading events one after the other happened through this entire episode, it was so well done that I was kind of riveted. And I didn't expect that because it had been so light and fluffy, and it just got so serious so quick.
Very quick.
One of the big things that happen is they have to carry oxygen past the wound. Right, so all these red blood cells are out on a cliff. The platelets are doing what they can to try to get stuff, fixed, but they have to go on the wound. And then the command says there's not enough oxygen getting to the cells. And they're like, okay, we know how to fix that. Turn up the blood pressure further. And as soon as they do, red blood cells go flying out. So what the body's trying to do is, okay, get oxygen to where it needs to go, but because there's an open wound, you're just shooting it out fast.
It's just spurting.
And I loved the blood cells attempting to they strap the oxygen onto their back, and here they are on this cliff, and the platelets are like, no, you need to go.
Also, platelets are flying out into the abyss in this episode. And it was, little platelets, man.
First time we see them die. Yeah.
Things get worse and worse. The body starts to lose temperature, so a blizzard sets in during the delivery run. Red's student, is like, we can't do this. We're going to give up. And Red's like, I'm never giving up. I'm always going to keep going. And, she sees flashes of everybody doing their job. So she tries to do her job, but she gets about 10 more feet and then collapses. And awakens to a red blood cell standing over in a different uniform. And there's all these new red blood cells. And apparently they had time to build the igloo.
Yeah.
Which was funny. But basically what's happened is a blood transfusion has happened. And they're like, wait, you guys are about to die? Okay, yeah, we're in. Let's help. We don't want to die either. Let's deliver the oxygen.
And I love their story too, because they're like, where'd you come from? Well, we were in this body, and then we got put in these weird tubes, and then also we got shot out into the sky, and here we are.
I loved this. This was an awesome way to depict a blood transfusion. So good.
So funny.
So the body is saved because of this, and everything kind of goes back to normal. What's really interesting in the last scenes, there's two uniform types now wandering through the body, which I thought was really cool.
There was one other thing that was really interesting, and that is that the white blood cell, he's saying, where did they come from? But really, where did they come from? Because there is the chance with the blood transfusion that there can be rejection by the immune system. And so I was like, I saw him say that, and I'm like, are you considering rejecting it? Ooh.
Red gets thanked for teaching her student something, which she overreacts to, but that's fine. And life starts going back to normal. Interesting enough, there was a ton of damage to the buildings in the center when they all went to Central. Did you guys notice that too?
Yeah. It looked like there were more than one wounds.
Right.
There was more than one.
Hmm.
But I only ever heard them say head wound.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take this point to ask you who you think what do you think this human is? What's the job? What's going on? All this stuff going on.
I have a suspicion this is a construction worker of some kind.
Interesting. That would explain the common abrasions and why all being around stuff that could infect them.
And working out in the sun on a hot day without taking breaks and drinking. That would be heat stroke.
That's very reasonable. I kind of pictured it as an old person.
Oh,
I didn't think of an occupation. Yeah.
Yeah, because I like fall off scaffolding and like get multiple abrasions in the head wound. I mean that's totally possible.
That happens.
I went with secret agent.
Oh my gosh. Secret agent transporting influenza A virus to
I don't have any basis for that other than that was a hell of a week that guy went through.
I kind of thought, like, I know a while back when I had mentioned that all this had to have happened within like 4 days, which is impossible because the influenza battle took a week, which means that white blood cell would have died and been replaced. But
hey, we got to ship him.
I know we're gonna break reality for a moment here. But you had mentioned, maybe a medical worker, and I think that's a good possibility too.
I was into that until heat stroke and the shock, the head wound. And I'm like, okay, why did that happen to a medical worker? So then I was like, okay, something more action packed, something like maybe he's in the desert and then he gets in a fight and he gets shot in the head and bounces ricochets off his skull.
That's good. That's good.
We need to go to final reviews, but I kind of want to ask the question because we watched a comedy anime in our last main podcast episode. And we talked a lot about character development and like the plot, you're funny, but where's the plot? Where's the stuff? And with this, not only is it educational, it's comedic. And we clearly, there's one character that kind of has an arc. White has a little bit of an arc, and then the rest are just kind of there. When do you get to be let off the hook when you're being judged, critically analysis by guys like us? When does that stop to matter? Is the concept enough to carry? What do you guys think on this? Thoughts?
See, I was judging this as just about every other anime. I wasn't even giving caveats for it. But due to its own category, I can't do an apples to orange comparison with, say, last week's episode. Or not last week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's got its own set of standards that I think we should be judging it based on our own personal tastes. But in the end, whether it's educational or not, this is a piece of media that is meant to entertain. And did it entertain me? Did the story keep me interested? And were the characters developed enough to where I cared about them? And that's kind of where I look at it.
I've actually been thinking about this as a possible topic for a minisode for a little while, but it's probably not enough to make up a minisode. But I kind of have come to the conclusion that I want to pay more attention to what the objective and goal was when they made the anime. Like, I don't want to drop what entertains me. Right. But I do want to add that as a little bit more of a ratio, perhaps, because I know that in the past, my scores have definitely been more about what do I think of this? Did I find entertainment and everything as a greater ratio to what their objective was and whether they achieved it? I think in this case, it kind of, to me at least, pushes the idea that, like Jason was saying, the apples to oranges things, it's designed for this educational with entertainment purpose. And that puts such a constraint on the design. If they're going to say, well, these are the circumstances, we've got biology. How are we going to portray this in an entertaining way? And I think that they achieved that really, really well. They met their goal. And I was very much entertained, both by the anime itself and also by the opportunity to go and do all this research and like be kind of carried along on a wave of information in a topic that I like. It very much reminds me of Land of the Lustrous,
Right.
Which was basically a geology version of the same thing.
Right.
And although that one had a lot more story to it. So yeah, I think for me, it's like a ratio, pretty high ratio of did they meet their objective in this case? And then probably 60-40%.
Yeah. I like those answers. All right, let's go to our final reviews. Jason, what'd you think?
The characters were endearing. The story was fairly interesting and it was educational. I didn't think it was groundbreaking, and it was cute, which I don't particularly like anime that are cute, except for those platelets. Oh my gosh, those platelets. Overall, I have to give it a 3. It was very middle of the road for me.
All right, Jeremy, how about you?
I was really, really entertained, and just the topic of biology in itself, to deal with that limitation and that world and have to build something that can be entertaining and educational and hit all these points for me. I'm incredibly impressed with what they achieved. I want to give it a 5. Podcast.
Nice. I think Jeremy's onto something there. I think there's a amount of creativity, even if the characters are tropey, there's still a ton of creativity going into this project. And I think that resonates with me. But like I said in the beginning, I wonder if I could go longer with like how many seasons before I'm like, yeah, I get it. Bacteria comes in and then you kill it. And then we get a new guy. So I'm going to go 4.
Before. I also think that it's a one-time view for me. Like it's a 5 Baka, but I couldn't watch it again. I'd be like, I got this already. You've imparted your entire value to me in a single watch. I could go watch Re:Zero again, and I would enjoy it just as much as I did before. I couldn't do that with this.
Fair enough. Okay. With that, let's talk about the next anime we're about to watch and talk about in the next 2 weeks. It is Wotakoi. Love is Hard for Otaku. It is a slice of life romantic comedy. You heard that right?
Guess who picked it?
Guess who picked it? It was Jason. So if we show up in 2 weeks with our eyes dug out, if you have thoughts on Cells at Work or the anime that's upcoming or any subject that we ever talk about, feel free to reach out to us on our Twitter at Baka Podcast or the Anime Baka Club at gmail.com, or leave a comment wherever you found our podcast. If you're on YouTube, you could hit that like button, subscribe. Isn't that what you're supposed to say on YouTube?
I think
you're listening to the podcast. Hi, thank you. You could leave reviews.
Yeah,
but you guys don't have to do anything. Thanks for listening. That's more than anything. Any other thoughts?
Hit the bell.
Oh yeah,
subscribe, like it, hit the bell, right?
You gotta point at it too.
Oh yeah, the doobly doo. We're terrible at this.
Any other thoughts?
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. As Cartman would say, namaste. God, I wish I could do his voice.
Sayonara.